Good morning, viewers. Welcome to a new series of ICICIdirect. Today we have with us Mr. Saurabh Mukherjea, a well-known face in the investment industry in India and someone who needs no introduction. Saurabh is the CIO and founder of Marcellus Investment Managers. Previously, Saurabh had been the CEO of Ambit Capital. Saurabh is also the author of many books with his upcoming book known as Unfiltered. It's a pleasure hosting you, Saurabh. Welcome to ICICIdirect.
Thank you, Gaurav. Thank you, ICICIdirect, for hosting me.
Yeah. Also, we have with us Mr. Abhishek Murarka. I think we have lost his connection. So, Saurabh, we'll wait for his connection. And till then, I'll ask you the first question.
Sure, go for it.
Yeah. Saurabh, we made an interesting point that barely 7-8 companies in Nifty have a return on capital more than cost of capital over the last 10 years. With this becomes more persistent as a selection measure in a rising interest market scenario as of now?
I think, look, this is a point relevant whether interest rates are rising or falling or flatlining. Basically, a company's measure of success, whether a company is actually adding any shareholder value or not, the simplest way to understand is, rather than looking at the share price, look at, is the company generating a pre-tax ROC of kam se kam 15%. Pre-tax ROC kam se kam 15%. If you want to look at post-tax ROC, तो आप 12% का hurdle लीजिए, pre-tax ROC पे 15%. And as you've rightly said, very few companies in our country pull it off, right? So most large companies in our country, do not generate a pre-tax ROC of at least 15%. So for example, if you take the large public sector banks, on a 10-year cycle, वो नहीं ला पाते हैं 15% ROE. And therefore, if you look at large public sector banks, you'll notice their 10-year wealth creation is close to zero. Similarly, most of the large conglomerates in India, most of the large, well-known, purane zamane ke conglomerates in India, they're also not able to get to a pre-tax ROC of 15% minimum. And as a result, you see most Indian conglomerates, wealth creation isn't the greatest, right? So it doesn't matter Federal Reserve kya kar raha hai, where interest rates are going, stock market mein bull market chal raha hai, bear market chal raha hai. This measure, and even if you're running an unlisted company, if your viewers are running an unlisted company, if your company is not making a pre-tax ROC of 15% over a 10-year period, it's time to think about winding up the business because you're not creating shareholder wealth.
That's right. Yeah, Abhishek.
Yeah, hi, Saurabh.
Hi.
So, Saurabh, I recently read a blog that you published last week. So it was more on the banking side that boring companies tend to be good long-term compounders. I was also looking at your composition. You don't own any PSU bank, not even SBI. So just wanted to understand, like, if you could elaborate a bit more on, like, in financial, what makes a great long-term compounder?
So let's just first address the general point, leaving aside financials. In the Indian market has two types of inefficiencies. Pehla hai, what you have in the Indian market, the first inefficiency is the company which doesn't create shareholder value. I'm linking it to Gaurav ka previous sawal. In the Indian stock market, the company that does not create shareholder value, return on capital 15 ke niche, that company will do lots of halla gulla, lots of publicity, lots of hype. It'll get brokers to write punchy buy notes and so on. And that company will convince your clients, Abhishek, that aap hamara stock lo, we are doing something special, right? And this is a consistent theme in Indian capitalism, right? I've been here for 14 years and they have consistently, the company which does not create shareholder value will go out of its way to woo the retail investor and even the institutional investor in Mumbai, right? But wahan pe paisa nahi banta. It's a massive sales pitch. It's a marketing blitz. In contrast, the company that consistently creates shareholder value, the people that we call consistent compounders, the sorts of companies we featured in our book Unusual Billionaires 6 years ago, these sorts of companies will quietly create immense wealth. They will build incredibly powerful franchises. They will generate return on capital, not 15, not 20, more like 30, 35, 40, right? In some cases, 50, 60% return on capital aega. These companies' promoters will be totally invisible to the public, right? Your clientele, most of the fund managers in Bombay will rarely get to meet these promoters. These promoters will quietly sit in their offices, their factories, their research labs and create billions of dollars of wealth. Public ke samne nahi honge, right? And the result of this is the Indian stock market will every year go for the shiny new object. Shiny new object कौन सा होगा? जो सबसे ज़्यादा promote किया गया होगा stock market में, right? Now let's apply this to banking, right? If you look at the last 10 years, the last 20 years, the legendary value creators, an HDFC Bank, a Kotak Bank, will rarely ever try to go out of its way to convince the fund manager in Bombay or the retail investor to buy their stock. So, for example, I've never seen Sashi Jagdishan of HDFC Bank go out of his way. I don't even think he comes in media that often, right? I think aate hi nahi hai media mein, right? But it's a money machine par excellence, HDFC Bank is, right? Neither have I seen Uday Kotak try to woo fund managers or retail investors ki mera aap stock lo. Both of these banks compound book value per share consistently at 20%. Rarely are they the best performing banking stock. But if you take a 10-year or 20-year cycle, आपको 20% की 20% compounding मिलती है, right? In contrast, the PSU banks on a 10-year cycle, almost every PSU bank on a 10-year cycle, return on equity होगी cost of equity के नीचे, and हर बार there'll be a predictable PSU bank cycle. People in our country will assume that अभी अच्छा चलेगा PSU bank का, 2-3 years the PSU banks will blaze the living daylights out. Then suddenly, through some bizarre stroke of bad luck, and bad luck इनको आता रहता है, right? If you work hard, good luck happens to you. You don't work hard, bad luck happens to you. Through some stroke of bad luck, they will go through 3, 4, 5 disastrous years, and all the gains of those 2-3 years will be given up. Over a 10-year cycle, PSU Bank ROE will be below cost of equity. Value creation over a 10-year cycle will be zero, right? So HDFC Bank, Kotak Bank, consistent wealth creation. Forget the wealth creation, forget the share price, consistent growth in the business at around the 20% mark. Rarely trying to impress anybody that we are doing something sexy, something very exciting. Understated management and immense wealth creation. PSU Bank, reverse, right? So this need for need to impress upon investors कि हम कुछ बहुत शानदार कुछ कर रहे हैं, that we are the sexiest thing in the stock market, that plays against the investor interest. The investor in India who makes money goes for the boring promoter who chup chap creates massive wealth.
That is very insightful, Saurabh. In fact, so I have seen that like your Kings of Capital, which is on the financial, so that has kind of underperformed because we have seen some of these, I would say, PSU banks outperforming the recent last 1.5 years. So one thought I was thinking is, if I were in your place, how do you deal with this period of underperformance when you know what you're holding is what you believe in, what is right? So how do you, like, there's a lot of noise as a fund manager.
My colleagues and I, we've been doing this for 20 years, right? Yeah. So you guys are, young, good-looking men on the rise. We are older men. We have lost most of our hair. देखिए आप और Gaurav, you guys are looking great. You got a full head of hair. We've lost a lot of our hair because this is our third cycle of watching the same movie for तीसरी बार, right? James Bond movie आती है every 3-4 साल. Jason Bourne की movie आती है every 3-4 साल. अभी शायद पठान की सेकंड कल रात को सुना कि पठान पार्ट 2 आ रही है, right? We have watched these movies since we were in our mid-20s, right? आपके एज से हम ये सेम पिक्चर वॉच कर रहे हैं, right? So पिक्चर में मोटा मोटी क्या होता है, the cycle lasts around 7-8 years, right? साइकिल की शुरुआत होती है, people say this time तो value investing की बारी आ गई, सस्ता लेंगे बड़ा कमाएंगे, right? And a bunch of both promoters, corporates emerge and their financiers emerge. And typically in any country, any free market economy, if you're a capitalist, आपको finance देने वाला कोई ना कोई होगा. If you're a low quality capitalist, आपको भी low quality lender मिल जाएगा. The free market is very powerful in that regard. Capitalist जिस प्रकार का, उसका financier भी उसी corresponding quality का. So in the early stage of this 7-8 year cycle, low quality corporates and low quality financiers will get together. Everybody will do वाहवागिरी. This is an outstanding idea. सस्ता है, grow कर रहा है. A lot of money will flow into that. अखबारों में, प्रेस में, मीडिया में बहुत सारा उसमें पब्लिसिटी की जाएगी. And people will 2 to 3 years into the cycle, they will say, अरे यार HDFC बैंक, कोटक बैंक क्यों लेना है, महंगा लग रहा है. और देखो सस्ता लेंडर कितना बढ़िया कर रहा है, सस्ता कैपिटलिस्ट कितना बढ़िया ग्रो कर रहा है. ये नेस्ले और ये एशियन पेंट्स छोड़ो, कोई चमकता सितारा खरीदो, right? Right, and both the financier and the capitalist, the stock will outperform. We will be told by people, बोला था आपको महंगे स्टॉक मत लेना, आपने ले लिया ना नेस्ले और HDFC बैंक और कोटक बैंक, अब नतीजा देखो, आप तो अंडर परफॉर्म कर रहे हो. right? Because this is our third iteration. अब तो I can even tell people, I'll be able to tell myself client बोलेगा क्या pushback आएगी. So when that pushback happens, we have a stack of books over here. We open our उस साल का reading. कुछ एनुअल रिपोर्ट्स इस तरफ होते हैं, कुछ पढ़ने की किताबें इस तरफ होती है, फोन पे भी लॉन्ग लिस्ट ऑफ बुक्स है. शांतिपूर्वक हमारा रीडिंग रैंप अप हो जाता है, अगली किताब के लिए टाइम आ जाती है, क्योंकि नाराबाजी सिमिलर है, सो अगले किताब के लिए टाइम आ जाती है. सो वी रैंप अप आवर रीडिंग एंड राइटिंग एंड वेट फॉर द inevitable turn in the cycle. Turn in the cycle आएगा for reasons that you and I won't be able to predict. The capitalist will overdo it. The lender will overdo it. The पूरा का पूरा construct will blow up. Then when it blows up, people will say ये तो obvious था, ये फटने वाला था. Now let's all go and buy Nestle, HDFC Bank, Kotak Bank, Asian Paints, and then for 2 to 3 years that's all they'll do. When they do that, we will be told महंगा लग रहा है, अभी लेना चाहिए क्या? And we will say the same thing that we've been saying for the last 10 years. And then gradually 3-4 years after buying HDFC Bank, Kotak Bank, 3-4 साल पैसा बनेगा, buying the same old, people will say यार ये तो बहुत obvious है, अब कुछ मजेदार कुछ करते हैं, कुछ चटपटा करते हैं, and a new capitalist and a new financier will emerge, right? So this is the cycle of capitalism. This is how America works, right? So अमेरिका में बिल्कुल सेम साइकिल, 7-8 साल के साइकिल में. इंडिया में सेम चीज. अगर आप लेट 90s में देखें तो .com and .com was primarily IT services companies. I think 300-400 IT services companies की IPO हुई लेट 90s में. 2007 से 2014 चला पावर एंड इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर का इरा. 2015, 16, 17 चला गुंडे लेंडर्स का इरा. एंड देन अभी कुछ और चल रहा है. एंड ये फ्लेवर आते जाते हैं. एंड हमारे जैसे लोग, वी हैव सीन इट सो मेनी टाइम्स दैट it's a little boringly repetitive, but at the same time, this is our job as investors to stay calm, do exactly what we have done for the last 20 years, and carry on making money for our clients in a Shantipurvak manner. Because it frees up time, we end up writing books like Unfiltered that Gaurav very kindly referenced.
Okay. So Saurabh, moving on to the next one.
Yeah.
Like you are someone who doesn't like multiples, right? And you focus on the ability of a business to generate money, right? Generate cash flow growth.
Right.
So have you ever taken exit when the based on valuation, and can you put some light on recent exits that you have taken from your portfolio?
So I saw something remarkable 2 weeks ago, right? So multiples की बात से याद आया. So I'm a middle class guy. I'll never be able to afford expensive cars, say like a Bentley. So Bentley का शोरूम में गए थे. एक ही जगह पे मुंबई में शोरूम है. तो वहां पे हमने किसी दोस्त के साथ गए थे. तो मैंने सुना कि बेंटली की भाव कुछ 2 करोड़ से भी ज्यादा है. ठीक है. सो माय फ्रेंड आस्क्ड द डीलर कितना हॉर्स पावर है इस गाड़ी में. सो द डीलर सेड 6 लीटर की इंजन है, राइट. सो माय फ्रेंड सेड मारुति स्विफ्ट डिजायर की तो 1 लीटर की इंजन है. मारुति स्विफ्ट डिजायर मानिए 10 लाख के आसपास है. 10 lakhs इज मारुति स्विफ्ट डिजायर. सो ही सेड ऑन अ प्राइस पर सिलेंडर, price per liter of engine horsepower, price per liter, अगर मैं if I'm paying 10 lakhs for a 1 liter car, 10 lakhs for a car with 1 liter engine, तो मैं I'm willing to pay 60 lakhs for a car with 6 liter engine.
Yeah.
So the dealer said नहीं, ऐसा नहीं होता. People don't make Bentley cars with how many price per liter of engine. तो if you want to pay 2 crores, we can have a discussion, said the dealer, but otherwise आप ले लीजिए आपको जो लेना है. 10 लाख प्रति लीटर ऑफ इंजन, राइट. and I've seen this consistently in investing as well. People will compare a Swift Desire with a Bentley, even in the investing context. So comparing, for example, a Bank of Baroda with HDFC Bank is a similar comparison, right? HDFC Bank is the Bentley of investing, and a Bank of Baroda is a Maruti Swift Desire. Maruti Swift Desire, nothing wrong with it, by the way, right? It was the Indian car of the year for several years. Nothing wrong with Bank of Baroda, but the comparison with HDFC Bank doesn't make sense, right? Now, what a P multiple does is as crazy as the comparison between Bentley and Maruti Swift Desire, right? And just as people don't buy a Ferrari or a Bentley, right, for 4 or 5 years, a Ferrari or a Bentley holds its value for decades. Sometimes actually it appreciates in value for a decade. Similarly, a great franchise like a Titan, like an HDFC Bank, like a Divi's Lab actually appreciates in value over time. It doesn't stay stable, right? Now, let's get into why that is. Why is it that a PE multiple is a useless way to look at stocks? Firstly, as we discussed right at the beginning, Gaurav, most companies, the vast majority of Nifty companies, उनकी कोई shareholder value creation है ही नहीं. So the earnings is actually useless, right? Sometimes these companies are corrupt, so the earnings are overstated. In most cases, the business doesn't have a value creation engine, and hence the earnings are overstated. So that's the first reason that a PE multiple is useless, right? The E is misleading or useless. दूसरा है, if you look at companies over the last 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, PE multiples have no predictive power. Company की PE ज़्यादा है या कम है, whether it's high or low, doesn't tell you anything about the next 3-year, 5-year compounding. In our book, Coffee Can Investing and Diamonds in the Dust, we've given tons of data on this, right? By staring at the PE multiple, you and I can't get the future right. And finally, the most fundamental reason why PE multiples don't work in India, the value of a company is its future cash flows discounted. The value of a company is not future earnings discounted. It's future free cash flows discounted. The vast majority of Nifty companies do not generate free cash flow. So उनकी future value काफी questionable है, right? So now, if a value of a company is future free cash flow discounted, price to free cash flow is an important metric to look at. And if you look at price to free cash flow, you get completely different conclusions to PE multiples. But the reason for it is as follows. So most high quality Indian franchises, free cash flow grows significantly faster than earnings, right? So large companies like say Pidilite, Asian Paints, Titan, free cash flow आपका grow करेगा 25% के आसपास, earnings will grow at 16, 17, 18%, right? Free cash flow will grow meaningfully faster than earnings. Share price follows free cash flow because share price is future free cash flow discounted. So if the free cash flow is dragging up the share price, if the earnings are behind, naturally the PE multiple will inflate over time. But that has no signaling power. So the most simple example, right, and a striking example of this, but it's not the only company where I've seen this. If you take Astral Poly, where आप जाके Astral Poly का numbers देखे, look at last 10-year numbers, profits are up around 5x, 6x, right? 15%, 16% profit compounding over the last decade. Free cash flow is up 100x, right? Share price is up 100x. 20 रुपए 10 साल पहले, आज 2000 रुपए, right? So Astral free cash flow and share price has gone up 100x. लेकिन जो बेचारा PE multiple ताक रहा है, those guys told me, many of the people staring at PE multiples told me 7 years ago कि PE ज़्यादा है. They told me 3 years ago PE ज़्यादा है. आज भी वही बोल रहे हैं. Because those poor fellows are not realizing Astral's share price is getting dragged up by superior free cash flow. Yeah. E is growing much lower, and therefore the PE is dragging up. But that doesn't mean anything, right? So E is the wrong metric to look at in India. Accounting fraud से distorted होता है, business incompetence से useless rendered होता है, and तीसरा, for great companies, free cash flow grows faster than earnings. The PE drags up, but that is a useless metric to look at. So the worst thing anybody can do in India is buy low quality stocks on the premise that अरे PE पे तो
valuation is less. Yeah.
हाँ जी सस्ता लग रहा है. Easy way to rather than doing that, you might want to go to the window and throw some of your money out of the window. गरीबों को नीचे पैसा मिल जाएगा at least.
Okay.
So, very interesting insights, Saurabh. So Saurabh, I had a follow-up question. Gaurav, so see, let's talk of companies that don't generate cash but show some signs of being a monopolist. So you like companies that have monopolistic tendencies. I'm talking of new age internet companies. Now, for an average investor, now the discussion is they have all fallen 60-70% from their IPO price. And the thought is, can these companies create a cash flow pool in the future? Right now, they are not generating cash, but they have created some sticky behavior. If you think of companies like Zomato, Nykaa, or even say Paytm, they have some signs of sticky behavior. Do you think they have signs of becoming a stock which can be something that you would look at?
So let's go through the same 3 steps again, right? Firstly, whether it's a new age stock, old age stock, bank, or infrastructure company, पहला चीज is the promoter a high integrity person, or is he a naughty man, right? So that's the first thing to answer, whether the company is Tanzanian or Indian, new age or old age, चोरी करता है या नहीं है इंसान, right? And that's the question that the forensic accountants in Marcellus, or those who are watching, if you want to do forensic accounting, please read the first 150 pages of Diamonds in the Dust. Teach yourself forensic accounting. Otherwise, life will condemn you to super pain in the Indian stock market. So, पहला सवाल वैसा खड़ा होता है कि चोरी करता है नहीं. And you won't be surprised that we have naughty new age promoters, just like that fellow in FTX in America. हमारे देश में naughty new age promoters हैं, and you have to obviously screen them out. Second is the question about, does the promoter have a track record of generating return on capital above cost of capital, right? Now, in many new age companies, many tech companies, what looks like operating expense is actually a capital expense. For example, a new age company, say, will launch an app. The kharcha on the app will be expensed through the P&L. It will go through the operating cash flow as a negative item, but effectively the kharcha on building the app is like a capital expenditure. So you and I can make those adjustments. We can make those adjustments to see that this tech company is doing the right thing. It's building a powerful app. तो उसका P&L को हिट मत करो, ऑपरेटिंग प्रॉफिट्स को हिट मत करो. इंस्टेड जो खर्चा आ रहा है ऐप पे, उसको आप डिनोमिनेटर में कैपिटल एम्प्लॉयड में ऐड कर दो. And after making those adjustments, check whether the fellow can generate 15% return on capital minimum. We find that's rarely the case, right? That's rarely the case that the promoter has that sort of skill. And most of the new age companies, I therefore reckon, are from a business skill perspective not very skillful, right? इनको ज़्यादा business करना भी आता नहीं है, सीख रहे हैं धीरे-धीरे, and therefore they should obviously learn, but they shouldn't learn on your and my money. And the third aspect, use our business intelligence to ask, has this company created something which others can't create? So let's take a very simple example. Let's take a global example, Uber, right? Is there something that Uber has done which is very difficult to replicate? Right? मेरे को नजर नहीं आता. As a user of Ola, Uber, various taxi services, जब सिंगापुर जाते हैं, Grow use करते हैं, right? जब US जाते हैं, Lyft use करते हैं, it's not apparent to me that ride share में huge कोई barrier to entry है. Right? Yes, there are two-sided network effects. So if more taxi drivers in Bombay are on Ola or Uber, then more customers will come. If more customers come, more taxi drivers will come. There is a two-sided network effect, but it does not appear to be some massive barrier to entry. Right? अगर barrier to entry होता अभिषेक, तो पैसा बनते दिखता, धंधे में पैसा बनते दिखता. कहीं पे दुनिया में धंधे में राइड शेयर में पैसा बनते दिख नहीं रहा है, which means that barriers to entry are quite shallow. And typically, because the barrier to entry is shallow, as soon as rideshare makes a little bit of money, 5 new dudes will rock up and say, "Hamari taxi bhi hum laga rahe hain rideshare ko." Right? Neither the software nor the technology creates a big barrier to entry. So many new age businesses are of this sort. Optically looks like kuch GMV VMV foda hai, right? But it's not very different from चौराहा में खड़े होके, ट्रैफिक लाइट पे खड़े होके पैसा बांटा है. And therefore, as long as you and I are getting a discount from these companies, we should obviously avail of their services, right? क्योंकि मेरे को सस्ते में सब्जी बांट रहा है, मैं अगर गाजर आधे भाव पे गाजर प्राप्त कर रहा हूँ through some instant delivery service, क्यों ना प्राप्त करूँ? But इसमें कोई barrier to entry बन नहीं रही. So एक तो integrity and governance level पे मेरे ख्याल से issues हैं. Second is track record. If you look at the accounts, adjust them for capex spends, which optically get counted as opex in conventional accounting. And the third aspect being, are there barriers to entry? Most of the new age companies in India, on all three counts, end up being suboptimal. I think Falguni and Nykaa have done a good job over the last few years, and we've been looking at them quite carefully. We'll carry on monitoring them to see if value emerges in Nykaa at some stage. By the way, let me just give a quick disclaimer. All the companies I have mentioned so far, other than Nykaa and I think Bank of Baroda, all of these companies I own personally through Marcellus's products. My parents are invested in them through Marcellus's products, and obviously Marcellus's 10,000 clients are invested in these companies. Back to you guys.
Okay. So Saurabh, tomorrow we have an important event, the union budget. And while we know you're not a macro person, is there anything, any specific area or any expectation from the budget that you have, or any?
Look, I mean, this is above my pay grade. Yeah. I'm just a regular fellow sitting in Andheri East in a small office, right? How am I supposed to have any expectations, right? Even if I have expectations, why should anybody care what my expectations of the budget are? And then by the same token, I'd also say I don't think for the people who are watching this program, I don't think it's an important event. The budget is an important event for a small group of people. Who are they? They are chartered accountants who advise individuals and corporates on tax. So obviously, the budget has a bearing on the country's tax structure, and CAs who specialize in that need to listen to it carefully. Similarly, CFOs, Chief Financial Officers of companies, also should keep an eye on the budget. Naturally, if I am part of the political fraternity, I should keep an eye on the budget. But I'm not so sure why there is mass hysteria in India about the budget, because it's not apparent to me that, say, our investments are somehow predicated on the budget, right? Will I buy more Titan? Will my colleagues buy more Dr. Lal Pathlab basis announcements in the budget? I don't think so, right? So I think this is a hangover from India's socialist era. Out of our 70 years of independence, best part of 45 years we were a socialist country, jahan pe sarkar was the andata, be all and end all, and people therefore got hooked onto the budget in that era. In free market economies, nobody spends time listening to the budget. I lived in the UK for 18 years. I don't think anybody in the UK even knew, other than the political fraternity, that budget ho raha hai. Whenever I visit America on work, I've never heard American fund managers say, we will take a stance on Apple or Google or Microsoft after the budget, right? Nobody in the right mind. Similarly, I've never heard French investors say, Hermes पे हमारी investment stance will be predicated on the budget. Handbag के ऊपर कितना tax आएगा, उसके ऊपर हम decide करेंगे. So this is a kind of a legacy of a bygone era, and I would my submission to your viewers would be, बजट पे ध्यान कम दें, इन्वेस्टमेंट पे, निवेश पे ध्यान ज़्यादा दें. Focus on understanding how to read accounts rather than trying to watch the budget speech on TV and make money out of that, which I think is not a really realistic endeavor.
Noted, Saurabh. Sir, I have a last question for you. Any long-held view that you have changed in the last 3 years since the pandemic? Because pandemic has been a time a lot of people have deliberated a lot on their life decisions. Any long-held view you have changed?
Yeah, so I think what we have learned, right, the speed at which habits change, right? That's been a real stunner for us. So, for example, before the pandemic, we used to believe that the only way we can get business is by going from city to city, organizing, events in 3-star, 4-star hotels or at the, say, Rotary Club, and pitching to people that Marcellus clean accounts dekhta hai, अच्छी company dekhta hai, etc., etc. And we used to do a lot of that pre-pandemic. Post-pandemic, we've realized that most people don't want to go to attend an event somewhere else in town. They would rather do what you guys are doing. They would rather log in, listen to the same content online. More importantly, they might say, I'll listen to it at my leisure, not when Marcellus or Saurabh are doing a webinar, but I'll listen to a recording later on. And we've been stunned at the lakhs of people who watch these recordings, right? If 3 years ago you had told me that some of our videos will be watched by 3 lakh, 4 lakh, 5 lakh people, I would have been saying, no, Abhishek, you're out of your mind. Why would anybody want to be bored by our droning voice over hours? But it's impressive how the pandemic has triggered a change in habits. People are willing to invest serious time and effort in learning about investing, making sensible decisions. All that they are saying is, we no longer want to get into a car, sit in a car for 60 minutes, burn fuel, and end up in some hotel, eating, drinking sugar tea, and having biscuits, listening to a fund manager. So the change in habits has been remarkable, and I think it behooves all of us to try to change with the grain of society. And I think in that regard, for all the pain and the human suffering the pandemic entailed, the positive aspect has been the realization that travel करके कुछ फायदा नहीं आने वाला है.
Got it. So Saurabh, you are a voracious reader. By the way, viewers, there's another book from Saurabh that is coming up. It's called Unfiltered. Saurabh, when is it getting launched?
20th February को publication है. If you guys are Marcellus fans, तो आप pre-order कर सकते हो. Amazon is doing pre-ordering. Amazon is taking pre-orders. So it's basically, the book is about decision making. So 6 years ago, I met a German lady. She's an executive coach to some of the world's most powerful business people, and through a bit of good luck, she agreed to become my coach. And what she's trained me in over the last 6 years is how to make sensible decisions under all sorts of pressure. Pressure of the pandemic, pressure of clients saying public sector banks or crony capitalists ke stock kharido, pressure of my children saying, why do you end up spending so much time in the office, right? So how do you make sensible decisions, live a decent life, be useful to the people around you in a hyper competitive networked world. So Unfiltered is about decision making as a businessman, as an investor, as a father, as a husband.
Got it. Look forward to this. Sort of any reading list, we look forward to the book Unfiltered. Look, personally, I remember this quote of Charlie Munger, like people say that he's a book with hands and are like legs, right? So in Indian context, I see you the same way. And by the way, I must mention that your blog, 3 Longs and 3 Shorts, that's a phenomenal repository of good reads. Any reading suggestion that you would like to give to the audience on like what you should focus on reading and how much time?
So look, folks, I mean, Abhishek is right, Charlie Munger is right. Those who don't read are condemned to a lifetime of serious pain, especially if you don't read in the context of investing. So if you want to, those who are watching, if you want to be on the 3 Longs, 3 Shorts mailing list, it's very simple. Write to me at saurabh@marcellus.in. So write to me at saurabh@marcellus.in. I'll put you on the mailing list, or you can go to our website and sign up. It's free of charge. We basically, whatever content we read over the course of the week, we summarize it and send it to our clients. But coming to good books to read, right? The whole style of investing that we've learned, right, is from a whole bunch of people. So let me name a few notable people. So Robert Hagstrom, he's a fund manager in America. He wrote 2 remarkable books in the 90s. One is called the Warren Buffett Way. That's more about stock selection. Warren Buffett Way by Hagstrom is on stock selection. And the second book is called the Warren Buffett Portfolio, right? Warren Buffett Portfolio is about how do you construct a portfolio. So stock selection, to aapne stocks alag-alag le liya. But how do you actually lock the stocks together and create a powerful portfolio? Read Robert Hagstrom's Warren Buffett Portfolio. It is very simply written. It is just remarkably good book on how to do high quality investing, right? Second, दूसरा किताब मैं अभी आप पढ़ रहा हूँ is Working Backwards with Amazon. Right, the book is called Working Backwards with Amazon. It's written by guys who worked in Amazon for the best part of 20 years. About how Amazon makes corporate decisions, right? So does Jeff Bezos sit and watch the budget before he decides Amazon ka capex mein hoga? Nahi karta. Jeff Bezos doesn't watch the budget, right? But Jeff Bezos does a whole bunch of things which has allowed Amazon to create a very efficient decision-making structure inside their corporate. It's really worth reading that, right? Another outstanding book to read, right? As I was writing. As I was writing Unfiltered with my coach, another outstanding book to read is a book by a guy called William Green, right? It's a guy called William Green. It's called Richer, Wiser, Happier: How the World's Greatest Investors Win in Life, Win in Markets and in Life, right? Richer, Wiser, Happier: How the World's Greatest Investors Win in Life and in Markets. So it's got all sorts of investors, people like Templeton, people like Buffett, people like Manish Babrai, right? कुछ ऐसे 15 investors हैं, and in-depth interviews with them, their habits, कब उठते हैं सुबह, क्या करते हैं उठने के बाद, how much time do they spend reading, how do they deal with emotional perturbance. Beautifully written book, life enhancing book. William Green, Richer, Wiser, Happier. Padhiye and get richer, wiser, happier.
Great. I think that's where we end this session. Thank you, Saurabh, for being a part of this new series. It's a pleasure hosting you.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you for your time, Saurabh.
My pleasure. Bye for now.